Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fleet's Catch-Up Ramblings 31. Yes, we're back. We're back again. So we've got a fairly short, sharp, rapid ramblings for you today. Really going to try and power through these questions as quickly as we can. To Fleet's Catch-Up Ramblings 31. Yes, we're back. We're back again. So we've got a fairly short, sharp, rapid... Indeed, all of them things. But yeah, so quick, rapid. One second, folks. Oh. I wondered what was annoying me. That's what was annoying me. There we go. Right. Sorry, folks. Just had a momentary thing I had to deal with. Another mini heatwave coming this week. Oh, well. It is what it is. It will be what it will be. And so it is. There we go. And do that. Right. Okay. So without further ado, let's crack right on into the questions. I don't think we will be here too long. Like I say, this is very much a rapid-fire event that I've put up, as I really couldn't do it yesterday, as I really was not fit for it. Absolutely cream-crackered. But, yeah, this won't take too long. I reckon we'll be here for about an hour, give or take. Right, so without further ado, let's get on with it. Bone Mill Boy. Why are anti-ship missiles like Harpoon and Naval Strike missiles stored at 45-degree angles and not in VLS cells? It can be anything from design to the way in which they want to mount the missile.
Biggest one is for the very large missiles washed from the rocket engine.
Yeah.
Because if you put one of those large anti-shipping missiles in the VLS tube, it's going to burn through the bottom.
That would...
I'm talking about the big uns. Big uns.
No. That's not a thing. If the Russians could mount shipwreck in a VLS, then...
Yeah, but it requires you to do a lot of strengthening.
It does, but that's not the sort of thing you'd need for something like Naval Strike or Harpoon. If Tomahawk can be launched from VLS, then Naval Strike and Harpoon can be launched from VLS if they want to try that.
But a lot of the diagonally mounted ones are the big ones.
Well, no, not really. We're talking about Harpoon and Naval Strike missile.
Yeah. Even then.
Not
if
really.
You don't want to damage the ship.
This isn't really a... No, I'm sorry, Foxo, but I'm going to have to really disagree. I think you are barking at something that doesn't exist. I think the real... I don't... If we've had missiles up to and including the size of shipwreck in VLS tubes and below deck tubes with all the trunking that requires for blast release, then at that point, I think it must be something else, I think, at that point.
I don't. Do you want me to explain why?
You can do, but I think you are barking at the...
Make a VLS system that's capable of taking rocket engine blast, right?
Yes,
you can make it. You can make it, but it's going to be A, heavy, and B, take up a lot more space. Because you need places for the heat to go. You need places for the rocket fumes to go.
I mean,
Basic physics of a rocket engine. And yes, you can harden a VLS cell against it, but that's heavy and that's complicated.
I mean, all VLS
and if you're
cells.
not carrying a lot of them,
I
you might as well put them on the deck.
I mean, all VLS cells are hardened against rocket blast to one degree or another.
Yeah, but there is hardened, and then there is hardened.
Well, yes, but you would presumably build that into the design, like with Mark 41. Yeah. Mark 41 can pack basically any missile in the NATO arsenal, pretty much. Harpoon, Tomahawk, and they don't take up significantly more space than something like an Asta 30 VLS tube.
Yes, but the cell itself doesn't. Just the works around it take up more space. We're talking about needing thicker decks.
I mean, I feel like you're assigning. I feel like you're assigning too much significance to this problem.
What? Hang on. Before we tie into this deeper, because I am joining late and driving, so I can't read. What are we trying to harden VLS tubes against?
Basically, the question was, why are Harpoon and Naval Strike Missile normally carried in deck-mounted tubes mounted at 45-degree angles and not in VLS cells? And Foxo is saying that she thinks it's because you can't... It's too much work to make VLS tubes that can take the rocket boosters required to loft large anti-ship missiles compared to the benefit of having them in deck tubes.
No,
not at all.
What I'm saying is that if you're not carrying a significant amount of them, it's a lot easier to put them on the angle tubes because you need to do a lot less hardening around the VLS.
I do wish you would have opened with that. Because
that's what I opened with.
No, you didn't. You opened with the specifics of it.
Also, Fleet, Harpoon is a light anti-shipping missile.
Yeah, I know. I never said it wasn't.
So
I was just repeating what Foxo had told me, or what I thought.
Big thing about Harpoon. Harpoon was developed and used before VLS.
Well, yes, I know.
So the big thing is there are ships that doesn't have VLS that uses Harpoon.
Well, yes, that is true.
In order for Harpoon to be used in VLS, an additional booster may be required because Harpoon's not designed to be fired straight up and then make course adjustments.
Yes.
Which will naturally decrease the range and stuff like that. So the US never bothered putting Harpoon into VLS because why?
Yeah.
If you need a anti-ship option out of VLS, Tomahawk exists.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is just reinforcing what we've already said. Like, and it kind of feeds into a point I was going to make before we got tied up on the whole booster rockets in VLS bit, which is that Harpoon and Naval Strike Missile and the box launchers they come in are very much plug and play. Not completely, but you could put them on a lot more warships fairly easily.
Also, there's a non-zero chance. There's also a non-zero chance that because the overall munition package is shorter, it is notionally slightly easier to reload in less developed facilities versus VLS.
Oh yeah, you can absolutely repack a box launcher much more easily than you can a VLS set.
And I think, doesn't Harpoon naturally have a fairly short set of legs relative to other strike missiles?
Yes.
It depends which version of Harpoon you're talking about, but yes, it is.
Really, Harpoon's relatively short range, but most of the modern Harpoons could reach out to 200 nautical miles, most likely.
Yeah. It's not got a short legs as it used to have, but compared to some naval strike options on the planet, it is a less capable missile than some of the other options, but it makes up for that in cost per shot and relative effectiveness.
It's an old missile.
If it started its life as short range, then there's no benefit. It would benefit more from being at an angled tube than from a vertical tube because it doesn't have the range to take advantage of the higher altitude.
And just like we generally said, it may require additional booster if you're trying to firing out of the VLS, which is why.
And also, there's the fact that there's also the flight profile. Tomahawk can take advantage of VLS because Tomahawk is held aloft by its wings. And it can take advantage of the loft to get an extra glide while it fires up its jet engine. Harpoon can't take advantage of that because Harpoon is held aloft primarily by its angle of attack and the thrust of its jet engine, rather than its aerodynamic control surfaces. As Harpoon doesn't really have any wings to speak of, it flies at an up angle to maintain its, lift.
In thrust we trust.
Yes. Which means it really can't
Harpoon
take it.
is not a cruise missile.
Yes. Which which basically, like I said, so it can't take. So there you are. That's why. There you go. Question answered.
Also, have you seen the images of the Russians attempting to put Caliber in VLS?
I'm not surprised they've tried it.
And the amount of strengthening they had to do to the VLS.
I'm not surprised they've tried it because Caliber is one of those missiles that in theory could benefit from the loft. But I'm not sure if it's going to be worth the price they're going to have to pay to fit it. We'll see, though. We'll see.
Hero.
Typical Gunner Officer asks, do you think the US will be better off with the AR-10 instead of the M14 as their battle rifle before the M16 comes into service? Yes. Yes! The AR-10 is better in every single way than the M14.
Not really.
No.
No.
Well,
it depends. Does getting rid of the M14 get rid of the systemic issues that cause the M14 to be bad?
The AR-10 is, as my memory is serving me of that platform, it's still a stoner cycle weapon, which means that if the Army cheaps out and uses the cheap powder like it did for the M16, it's just gonna be M16 but earlier.
It is still directly.
It's literally M16 but earlier.
It is basically. Okay, there are some nuances, but it is technically just bigger M16.
Yeah, it's M16 shaded for 7.62 NATO.
However,
And heavy weapon.
there is a reason why they didn't choose the AR-10 as opposed to the M14, and no, it's not because of pride or anything.
Wasn't it
Since both
corruption?
guns are
Because there
American.
was a lot of bribery in that contest.
No, not really. I mean, kind of, but not really. To be fair, the big problem
M14
is
is literally just warmed over M1 Garand compared to AR-10,
really.
which is actually a
Not
modern
really.
rifle.
The problem is with the AR-10 is that the AR-10 is likely going to suffer from the same problem the M16 does, which is that it gets sold as the self-cleaning rifle, so they don't issue the cleaning kits with it, but they also don't issue the powder, or they don't set the specification for the 7.62 rounds to have the correct powder type, which is what caused the M16 and the AR-15 platform as a whole to have massive perception issues during and after the Vietnam War.
I mean, politely, if we want to give the US a decent rifle, they should have just kept their mouths shut, bit the bullet, and adopted the bloody intermediate cartridge FN FAL, like everyone else was going to before they put their foot down and demanded this stupid sticking to 7.62, when it was clear the intermediate cartridge was the... No, why would you adopt... The 7.62 FAL is worse than the intermediate cartridge FAL in every way. The only reason we adopted
the US is married to the full caliber rifle at this point. That's not a political thing, it's a doctrine thing.
I don't care if it's doctrine. I don't care if it's doctrine,
Letting
political,
up to
or
massively letting opinion
You have to
cloud
care.
judgment here.
You have
to care.
It says how the American infantry squad is organized. You need the full power cartridge. But I do agree with you. Going with something like the FN FAL or an L1A1 equivalent would be a lot
is
better.
the FN FAL.
Not quite.
There are manufacturing differences and stuff like that.
And it's also not capable of fully automatic fire.
That too. Of
Strange
course, not
as
that it
always.
matters. The FAL that they brought in for testing was a Belgian FAL.
Yes.
Yeah. Either way, look. Whilst
Because
I get
the
that,
original British L1A ones were auto-chambered in British 303 rounds, not 308. And so you could very much chamber an American FAL in the M1 Grands.
yeah, I
Calvin
mean,
pretty easy.
They're never gonna have a 30-06 FAL.
no, it's not going to be that.
The entire
They
point
did
is
make some.
standardizing. Yes, but the entire point is they're supposed to standardize on 762 NATO.
Yeah, and FAL will give them that in its form that it comes out in. What I will point
That's why
out
M14
what I will point out is my original statement was basically the fact that giving the US a decent rifle is the intermediate cartridge FAL, and that is me standing to that statement simply because the US doctrine was
It's
stupid at the
not.
time and outdated.
It's not, though.
Again, you're letting opinion cloud judgment.
I'm not.
And Fleet,
The
I am
US
obligated to I am obligated to point out that the U.S. is now going back to a trying, spending billions of dollars of my taxes, trying to go back to, I guess, an intermediate cartridge, because they found that 5.56 doesn't really have the power that they want.
Which is the US once
And-
again fundamentally misunderstanding how fucking war works and taking a step backwards.
No, they're not.
But no,
No, they're doing
no,
this
no,
because
no,
of
no, no, no,
experience.
why
no,
you
no,
want
no,
a
no.
full power round on a 7.62.
No, right. No. I know what's going on. Fleet, you are aware the intermediate caliber round was good for the British and a lot of European armies because it wasn't going to be the sole rifle in the infantry squad, right? The British intermediate caliber rifle was supposed to be integrated with the Lee Enfields in the British infantry squad. So you had a high and low mix.
Well, that's
That is
fine.
where the infantry, that is where the 5.56 comes in at being so well, because it's an effective close range rifle. But as the Soviets did, as the Chinese did, as the Americans did, and as a lot of European countries did, if you have to go for one, you go for the full power rifle round.
I mean, literally none of those powers operate full power rifle rounds today.
But
They
they
all
all-
operate
No,
intermediate
no, no,
rounds.
no,
And they hated the
I'm
fact
sorry.
that they did that.
I'm sorry.
Well, if they hated the fact that they did it,
The
why do they
Russians
all
are
fucking do it?
operating the 7.62 by 51.
Because. So here's the thing. Body armor has improved a lot nowadays. 223 is just not cutting it. 5.56 not. There are plenty of body armor that will stop at 5.56
And this-
nowadays.
And what the United States... Sorry, go ahead. Let me know when you're done. now.
Because level 4 plate will reliably stop a couple of 5.56 rounds. It will not stop a 308.
And more
And
importantly, a lot of the issues that the US suffer nowadays comes from the war in Afghan, where
Additionally,
the ranges opened up a hell lot more than it traditionally had been
Which-
for the US Army.
Yeah, which is
And-
not really the
No,
correct lessons to take
wait,
from modern
wait,
year on
I've
peer
been-
conflict.
Wait, I have been trying to get my point in for the last 3 minutes. Please let me speak. The U.S. Army and the U.S. Marine Corps, in conjunction with its allies, has learned in the last 20 years, actually 22 years, of fighting in Afghanistan with the full scope of what they can do with sensors now, that the 5.56 does not have the inertia to engage in what is going to be likely battle ranges going forward. That is why they're going back to a heavier cartridge, because the Russians are using 7.62, or Warsaw Pact or Warsaw Pact derived militaries are using 7.62. That cartridge is heavier and it carries its velocity and energy further than 5.56 can.
With an asterisk.
Yes, it
I
has
feel like
stability,
taking
but-
lessons from Afghanistan, given the
Is the
environment.
correct thing, because we also incorporate that with the war in Ukraine. We've seen a large increase in effective combat range with infantry rifles.
And while you can lambast how the U.S. and the coalition partners handled Afghanistan every day of the week and 6 times on Sunday, as far as squad level tactics, boots on the ground, rifles in hand tactics, the lessons from that is valid. It is the
Because
strategic and operational context where things were fumbled.
and it's also rightfully, you've got to remember that an idea around 5.56 was that you would be able to get much closer to your opponent, right? When it came to deployment.
The big thing
Well,
about
it's had a-
5.56 is that they are designed to operate in the combat ranges that was so prevalent in the earlier wars in World War II, Korea, like that the 40-50s era. It's been demonstrated that 300 yards is about as far as a normal infantry engagement range should be. 5.56 excels at that. However, over time, the ranges have now officially opened up. With the additional enhancement in body armor, we're now looking at probably out to like 500, 600 yards, where 5.56 is losing its punch.
Yeah, because we
Well,
know from Ukrainian training manuals that expected infantry rifle ranges are ranging between 700 and 500 yards.
Which is the big thing, because 7.6, the Russian 7.62 by 39 can still reach out there and hurt someone.
All right. In the face
5.56
of
can no longer do
I'm
that.
not. Look, I can be.
Can I just point some out quickly?
All right.
'Cause it's really interesting, and that's actually really interesting because Ukraine's trying to make their own rifles as well as the imported ones, and the Ukrainians have put into production a 7.62 by 51 round marksman / assault rifle, which is a proper full length high caliber rifle round, which hasn't been seen since in these sort of weapons since the 50s. But yeah,
Anyway, we tangent a little bit. For the question, the big reason why the US did not adopt the AR-10 is because the AR-10's barrel blew up during testing.
Yeah, that's fine. That's scads. But also, just to very quickly round off, in the face of quite literally overwhelming everyone else apart from me saying the same thing, I'm stubborn, but I'm not stubborn enough to go when everyone else is literally saying not just similar things, but the exact same thing. I'm not stubborn enough.
That you've been stubborn this whole time, and we're refusing people until now.
Well, yes.
Wait, Dragon.
Look, you're gonna take the win, or you're gonna have me double down. Because you can either take the win with grace, or I can double down Dragon.
Oh, yeah, but if
Take
you
your choice.
double down, you just get slapped down twice as hard.
Not on my server. If you were in the dry dock, maybe, but not on my server.
anyway, next question.
Paul Amos, do you...
So I really want to talk about Ukrainian rifles.
Yeah,
But
Paul
anyway.
Amos, does the panel think there's any possibility of a diplomatic resolution to the Ukraine war, and if not, where do they see it going forwards? Yes, absolutely. We are approaching a point where there will be a settlement. Whether
We're
it'll...
just waiting.
Are we?
Yes, we are.
I don't think we are.
No, we are. It's going to be in the next 5 to 10 years.
Based on what?
5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, we have very different definitions of soon.
Yeah, approaching is like the next 18 months.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
No, approaching is normally less than 18 months, honestly.
Yeah, like
18
Trying-
months is stretching it, but it's technically a part of
I
the
would say
Can
like
I-
3 to 6 months.
Anyway, can we
So go on,
stop
Lead?
arguing definitions?
Can I finish my... So anyway, in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, because I refuse to pin it down, quite literally, because I don't know, depending on how obviously the war economies and the Well, the Ukrainians have basically have the steam to keep going as long as the West is going to keep shoveling. Not so much military aid is obviously helping them fight, but the real benefit here is the financial aid. Ukraine can keep its war economy going and keep the spending levels it's going indefinitely as long as the lines of credit, which are exceptionally generous, keep going into Ukrainian coffers from the EU. As long as that's maintained, Ukraine has no reason to give up the fight, at least to retain its sovereignty. The one thing that even Ukraine has realized, however, that the possibility of pushing back the Russians from pretty much the majority of the territory they have gained is basically now impossible. And the pipe dream of the reclamation of Crimea is basically off the table entirely. The unfortunate...
what?
The
Let him finish. Let him finish.
The unfortunate thing we have to accept is that the Russians have committed themselves to what is in essence a total war, but not declaring it as such. They are using the economy to gather up manpower by the massive sign-on bonuses they're offering, and they are using measures in economic, economic restructuring and management of state capital that one would see in a total war scenario, in order to keep the industries running and the economy at least not imploding instantly. The problem where that leaves Ukraine is, unfortunately, Russia does at this point have more shit to throw at the wall. More men, more equipment. It might be rubbish equipment, but the fact of the matter is, despite everything that Ukraine is doing, despite everything the West is doing, the Russians are still pushing westwards. It is an incredibly slow advance, but it is still an advance. The only question at this point basically is, when does the Kremlin decide to stop and sit down and negotiate? And this is the thing. That is what is going to decide when this war ends. At least the current phase of it. The Kremlin... I'm not done. I'm not done.
Right.
I'm not
But we're
done.
at a...
So, Dragon, let him finish before I mute you.
The current situation I expect to occur is eventually there will come a point where the Russians, because of the way in which they have gained their manpower reserves and because of the way in which they have gained their equipment reserves, there will come a tipping point in the next 3 to 5 years where the inflows of manpower and equipment will slacken off. If the Russian economic situation doesn't change to a point to force the decision to halt defense operations and seek ceasefire in place, followed by rationalization of that ceasefire in place as the new border de jure. The question is, however, how much more pain is the Russian government willing to take in order to push that final de jure new border further west?
You know?
Yes.
Finished waffling now?
Okay, right. I'll just for a second, I think you're being way too pessimistic.
I don't think you're looking at facts.
Because I don't even
general here.
think this will. You're being. I don't think it's a mixture. You're not being pessimistic enough, and you're being too pessimistic.
Do you mean optimistic there, or?
How can I be too pessimistic and not pessimistic
That's why I'm
enough?
saying.
In two different areas. This war probably won't end with a negotiated ceasefire. Because, as far as Russia's concerned, this is a war of national survival. As far as Ukraine is concerned, this is a war of national survival. As far as the Russian, at least political elite, from what we've observed, they see this isn't a war against Ukraine, this is a war against NATO. They can't afford to back down. And we're also starting to see that there is massive cracks developing in the Russian financial system. Elements of the large significant elements of the Russian economy, especially when it comes to manufacturing, are being overworked and they're over capacity and stuff's starting to break down. And yeah, you've got to remember that basically Russia, as we're seeing, is running out of Oh, on the population side, Russia's in a bit of a shit situation. They have a larger population than Ukraine, but unlike Ukraine, they need a significant portion of that population to sustain the economy, the war economy. So what they can actually mobilize is limited. And we've seen that it is limited. The Russians haven't been able to get as much men as they want or they need. They've still got a lot of under-strength divisions. If we look at stuff like the satellite reports in the east, a lot of those depots are empty, and there's entire empty military bases in the east.
I mean, I'll not discount.
So, as I see it, I think you're being too pessimistic in the fact that Russia isn't this indomitable dreadnought of it can just keep going. It can't.
Oh no,
It's bleeding and it's cannibalizing itself.
Did kind of say that, Fleet.
no.
He's
what
basically saying,
Can I
No.
finish? Can I finish? However, I think you're being too optimistic with it ending in a negotiated peace. Because as I see it, Russia can't afford to back down here. They're in balls deep. They can't. Ukrainian government sues for peace. The Ukrainian government collapses. Because the Ukrainian people want to continue this war. There is enough revanchism in that country. It's flirting with fascism levels of revanchism. Like, I know we don't like to talk bad about Ukraine, but there is hardcore militarist elements that have become mainstream in Ukraine. And because neither side I don't think will be willing to negotiate a full ceasefire and peace deal, it's going to turn into a frozen conflict. Like Russia in Georgia. Or Russia in the stands. Or just Pakistan and Afghanistan. Or Pakistan and pretty much all their neighbours. Or a lot of African countries. I think the war's just going to fizzle out into a forever war.
This war's not going to end, because if it ends, one country is dead. Because to be brutally honest, what happens if Ukraine agrees to a peace treaty with currently losing all of the land they've lost?
Russia will come back in 6 years.
Well, yes, that's both sides are aware
But
of that.
also, no, but what will if you think of how much territory is being lost from Ukraine, what is the knock-on effects to their economy and their country?
Well,
Because it's bad.
Well,
they need to keep fighting.
Well, I think you two have. That's not the geopolitical situation.
Neither's what
I
you're talking
understand
about.
it. I will point out everything that Foxo has said is fundamentally correct, especially in regards to the Russian strain on manpower and equipment. She's right. The Russians do not have the manpower they need, nor do they have the kit they need, especially now the stockpiles have been exhausted. And she's also right that the Russian economy is now overheating. It has been overheating for some time, and yes, there are also cracks in the Russian financial system that are actually now becoming visible. This just I'll let you go, let me go. So
Oh, you actually didn't, but okay.
But I let Foxo finish.
You didn't let me, but
I didn't
go
so
on then.
I didn't know you wanted to speak. But this is the reason that I think that there has already been rumblings within the Ukrainian parliament and from the presidency and with polls conducted among the Ukrainian populace, that there is growing support for the possibility of perhaps the transition of some territory, not in toto, but at least in the form of a ceasefire in place, to allow for regeneration and a return to allow for proper regeneration of Ukrainian fighting power at a rate faster than Russia can regenerate. Because as you've said, the Russians are in a much worse state than the Ukrainians are. I am aware of the militarism and revanchism, and I don't think that will go away in a ceasefire. In fact, it will probably be a ceasefire in place to allow for the military of a kind to be built up that would be able to conduct the sweeping counteroffensive Ukraine has always wanted to do but never had the kit for. But make no mistake, when I say, as I said at the start, if a ceasefire does take place and a new border is de jure locked in, because it won't be a negotiated peace, it'll be a ceasefire in place, at best.
But you literally said earlier that it's a negotiated peace.
I said it was
Yes.
I said it was a ceasefire with a new border de jure. That's what I said specifically.
No, you actually outright called it a negotiated peace.
Yeah, you started out with that as your position, Fleet.
Is not negotiating a ceasefire to create a new border de jure technically a negotiated peace?
But you've
Doesn't it come
just
under that
said it's not a
definition?
negotiated peace.
Yeah, because right. De jure means that it is
By
signed
law.
into law that X part is X country. That is what de jure means. Do you
I
mean
thought
de
that-
facto?
I thought that was de facto. Have I
De
got my
facto is where you control it, but it's not technically a part of you
Right,
legally.
sorry, I've got me D's mixed up. That's probably causing all the confusion. Right, sorry, I meant every time I've said de jure, I've meant de facto. Sorry, got my D's mixed up. Damn it! Oh god, clip that. Put it in the
Somebody get
fleetisms.
this man
Put
a
it in the
legal
fleetisms.
dictionary.
Put it in the fleetisms. It's
No, we don't
fine.
even need a legal dictionary. We just need a dictionary for fleet.
I'm trying to give him a little credit. It's bad enough I just jumped down the mic and out his earpiece so I could slap him about 15 minutes ago.
Anyway,
Because there's a very easy way to remember. De jure is legal. De facto is I'm standing here with a gun. Fucking do it.
yeah, okay. So de facto. So the new border de facto there. So as I now did say before, because I said the wrong thing, but so it is a ceasefire in place with a de facto new national boundary, which neither side considers to be final. And one of the reasons I suspect that both sides would be open to that is the following. Dragon has made a valid point about, the economy and the loss of land. But I would point out that that land is lost now. The economic effects of the loss of that land are perhaps as worse as they are likely to be at the current moment. In the event of a ceasefire in place, I suspect that Ukraine... There will be some reorientation, no doubt, but the lands are lost. The Russians are already occupying them. And
Okay.
the Ukrainian
Right.
economy has had to adjust already. While a return to somewhat peacetime would result in disruption, I don't think it would be as much as Dragon's saying it is.
Dragon, if I may.
Go on.
I think Dragon has waited.
I'll let Runon go before I explode at you a bit.
Okay, yeah, it'll give him a chance to take some pressure out of the steam loop, which they were doing at work today. For reference, on an 800 megawatt fission reactor, letting out steam from the turbine loop is very loud.
Not surprising.
Anyway.
Go off topic.
It was a nice, funny anecdote. The problem is that you're largely, at least not mentioning, if not ignoring Fleet, is that right now the Ukrainian economy is on the steroids known as Western aid in both monetary and material capacities. Additionally, the loss of that territory, whatever you're going to be losing some degree of Black Sea access, and the mineral rights, or at least the access to the minerals that Ukraine has the rights to, in my opinion. If Russia continues to retain the ground that it currently holds, which means it's going to kneecap, or at a minimum reduce, their ability to grow their economy and their industry going forward, which is going to make them it's going to hurt their ability to defend themselves on their own force of arms without foreign aid, or without a larger extent of foreign aid than if they're able to regain their 2014 borders. This will have knock-on effects. Additionally, the fact that Russia appears to be engaging in a cultural genocide of the Ukrainians and that cultural is a very important word. I want to highlight that. In its controlled territories is going to cause domestic politics issues in Ukraine that it's going to hurt the unity of the Ukrainians internally. So Ukraine really doesn't want to give up that territory.
Ukraine can't give up that territory. So about your thing about how there's a growing percentile of people in Ukraine who are more willing to accept that we've lost the land. Would you like to know what age bracket that is?
Okay, go on. I'm waiting.
55 to 75-year-olds. The ones who are tired of the war. Also, to be brutally honest, the ones who are not going to have to live with it.
Yep.
Also, a case of that Europe has now stepped in stating they cannot accept a peace where Ukraine does not regain territory. Because, once again, it means Russia is getting closer to Europe. International politics-wise, which you apparently were talking about earlier, understanding, shows that no, we can't let Russia have this. Because if we let Russia have this, we're done for, effectively, in the long run. How many times do we need to appease a dictator?
And it would be what the blue blazes? Okay. It would be one thing if there was a guarantee that as soon as the Russo-Ukraine war comes to a formal peace treaty establishing a new set of borders, Ukraine would be immediately and without any delay inducted into NATO.
Apart from, because this is an important bit to mention, apart from the fact that the US currently is on Russia's side of that, no, Ukraine is not allowed to join NATO, and is not allowed to take part in European trade treaties.
And if nothing
and
else,
Europe's told the US to go fuck themselves.
Let Runon continue from there. I just need to
if
interject
nothing
there.
else, I was going to mention our current crop in Washington. But also you have, even if you didn't have that current leadership in Washington, you would also have Turkey and Belarus and any other captive NATO members under the Russian sphere of influence that are going to block that. Because the way NATO is written, it requires unanimous consent from signatory nations to admit new members. So there's no real benefit for Ukraine to sign off significant fractions of its land at this time. I do believe that Zelensky is making a sweeping statement that he doesn't necessarily intend to back to the full breadth of the statement, so he has something to be seen to be giving up. But I don't see a peace treaty or formal armistice that involves Moscow keeping a significant fraction of the lands that it currently has captured. Additionally, if they are permitted to keep those lands, Ukraine is never getting that back unless Russia attacks a NATO member.
Yep.
Because even if Ukraine is allowed into NATO, NATO is a defensive alliance. The NATO allies are not obligated to come in and assist Ukraine in an offensive war of reconquest. So it's either going to be Russia punches NATO, and there's a conventional war between Moscow and NATO, or the Russian Federation, as we currently understand it, disintegrates, and Ukraine is able to move forces into the area that should legally be considered Ukraine and control and stabilize that area.
But you've also got to remember the most fundamental issue of any plans for Ukraine to cede territory to Russia. And that's the fact the Ukrainian government, no matter how much we like to downplay it because it's been a part of Russian propaganda, does have a major right-wing, militarist, borderline neo-Nazi flank to it, which over the past 4 years has grown massively with the Russian invasion.
I would say nationalist socialist, not neo-Nazi, because there is noticeable differences in it.
Yes, but there's also
It's
been a
more
rise of Banderites.
Yeah, I'm more just
Which,
saying in general, it is a more traditional nationalist socialist rather than Nazi nationalist socialist.
Yes.
There is only one kind of nationalist socialist. Like, I'm
No,
sorry.
there isn't. No, there really isn't.
Like, I'm sorry if you're putting
like
national
saying there's one
socialist
kind
in
of
your
communism.
national socialist in your name. I'm sorry, but
Fleet.
You
Don't
are
do
aware,
that.
technically
Don't do
speaking,
that.
according to a lot of political things, National Socialism is actually a good thing.
What? The dragon just...
Right?
But,
Right.
You know, you interrupted me and derailed my point that I was trying to make about Ukraine. So, can I make a point about Ukraine that you already derailed us off? Thank you. And the big thing about Ukraine is, whatever the fuck we want to call it, they have a large, authoritarian, right-wing, militarist faction that has been growing rapidly since the Russian invasion. And even if Trump and the Russians got what they want, and the Ukrainian government, the Zelensky regime, signed the peace, it is almost guaranteed that the Zelensky government wouldn't stay in power, and a far-right regime would come in and the war would continue. The Russians would go, I told you so, they are Nazis. And the right-wing Ukrainian regime is revanchist as hell and has a hard hate boner for Russians.
I assume by hate boner you mean basically trying to do a Ukrainian version of what the Russians are doing in the Ukrainian territory they currently occupy, right? Just to be clear.
For the moderates, yes.
Oh.
But there are concerningly large factions which follow the Banderite side of things.
Which is, for those not in the know like myself,
the final solution to the Russian problem.
Oh, that's not... Oh.
And a lot of those factions, those right-wing, ultra-right-wing factions, are going to have a legitimate claim that Moscow is genociding ethnic Ukrainians.
Yep.
Which is going to dump high-octane gasoline on that fire.
Yep. And this is a philosophy that came out of the Holodomor and was fading away after the collapse of the USSR and has been brought back into sharp relief. And there is, especially in eastern Ukraine, there is a significant minority that believes that Russians are a fundamental threat to Ukrainian people and have to be
You can say
broken across their knee, as we to put it politely.
Yeah.
And the current relatively liberal democratic government won't survive a peace treaty currently.
The problem...
And again, there's nothing stopping Russia just doing this again in 5 to 10 years. In fact, currently, if the territories which have been captured are allowed to stay Russian, effectively means Ukraine doesn't have a chance to survive next time. They are done for.
I don't see that. Taking these territories.
They've already, right, Fleet, actual military analysts have stated the territories they have taken in 5 to 10 years under Russian control versus Ukraine. What would happen to Ukraine post-war would mean Russia would basically have the perfect attack vector.
Yes, but
They would have built-up supply lines which they can get to the heart of their core territory. They will not have to worry about most partisans because those partisans will be dead in brutal campaigns to wipe anyone out.
Yes, that is all very true. It still doesn't. The lands they have taken still, as you've said yourself, won't fix the chronic manpower and equipment problems that the Russian military is having.
Yes, but
if you give Russia the terrain it wants and all the oblast is partially occupied, which is what the Russians are demanding, you've effectively taken every bit of defensible terrain Ukraine has until you hit the Dnipro River.
Yeah.
You've given the Russians all the minor rivers. You've given them the forests. You've given them the hills.
Yeah, but
to Kyiv and through Chernihiv, that is all a flat arboreal plain. That is the best farmland on the fucking continent. It is flat. It is not swamps. It's nice and firm. It's rich. And it's impossible to defend until you hit Kyiv.
Yeah,
what
I would point out is that I've not been arguing. My assumption has been that any peace deal, quote unquote, would be a ceasefire in place at the front, not giving the Russians everything they want, because that's just never going to happen.
But giving them that front line, that fleet. Did you not listen to what I said?
Yeah, you would say
a whole bit of if they get what they have currently taken. Gives them the advantage that that they will be able to just go for round 2 in 5 to 10 years.
It's not that. It's if we're going off peace, right? If we're going off peace. The Russians will not accept the peace deal where they do not get all the Eastern Oblasts.
Well, current.
By Russian law, they can't accept that peace deal because legally that is Russian territory.
The problem. No, sorry, go on. Sorry, you're probably not done. Go on.
Which means that since it's legal Russian territory, that the Russian constitution itself says they have to take it back before any peace deal is signed, and it can't be surrendered. Which means any peace negotiations with Ukraine is going to be handing over those oblasts. Which means that the losses of cities like Odessa.
Oh shit! Yeah, they claimed Odessa.
And the other thing, Fleet, which I think I see a flaw in your logic / arithmetic, is whatever value you assign to the current portion of Ukraine under Russian control. Multiply that by 2 and then add that to the Russians, because Ukraine is losing that territory. So it's not just a question of. So Russia's not only going to be better at replenishing its losses and replenishing its military capability and so on and so forth, but Ukraine is also going to be that much worse.
Why is Ukraine going to be worse at replenishing their capability when they've lost territory they've already lost?
Because they've lost a third of their population.
Because we're no longer talking in 3-month cycles. We're talking in 5 and 10 year cycles. Right?
It's not that.
And also,
right? Hang on. Hang on. Because, yes, they do not have control of that territory. They are not getting the human and material resources from that territory now. While there is an active conflict going on, and neither side can really build up a surplus of supplies. The problem is, once that active conflict stops, both sides can build up a surplus of supplies because they are no longer actively expending personnel, equipment, and munitions at the rate that they are during a full fire conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Which means now that all of that excess warfighting capacity can be put into the Russian ability to build up a surplus and removed from the Ukrainian ability to build up a surplus.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, when there is a negotiated ceasefire, most U.S. public aid that is signed off by Washington is going to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Because one, Americans have very short memories. Two, we have an incredibly short-sighted and isolationist government in power right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there are European countries which will be more than happy to do the same.
I disagree
Maybe not
with
the
that.
I don't,
Maybe
considering
not-
we've
But
already
there are-
got.
And let her speak.
There are
Then
going
say
to
that to bloody fleet as well, then, Fox, instead of just targeting one.
there are going to be European countries and other foreign allies who are going to reduce or eliminate their aid as soon as there is a formal armistice signed, which is going to further hurt the Ukrainian ability to rebuild and stock up. And there will also be, on the flip side of that, there will be sanctions that do get eased or lifted entirely, which will help the Russian ability to rebuild.
And
My
to
point's
make it
complete.
all worse,
I-
Ukraine's losing a third of their population.
Also, we've already got European powers and parties going, well, if the war ends, we can stop funding the military again. Groups are already formed of going, well, we can just go back to pre-war. There literally are groups currently going, we don't need to invest as much as we currently have. And if you do not have the reason to keep going, they gain traction. A lot of traction.
Can we just move on? Because chat's asking us to move on.
But I still think I still don't.
Can we just move on?
I don't want to.
Can we? We've spent 25 minutes on this.
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
feels like you guys have put your point across and I've lost.
You
Yeah,
gave your...
chat's asking us to move along. Can we move
Also,
along?
you gave your point at the beginning.
Which I
Yeah.
haven't had a chance
Okay.
to defend. I've just been
Okay.
dogpiled on. But either
Yeah,
way,
yeah, but chat's asking us to move on. We've been on here 25 minutes. Just next question.
This is
all
right.
right.
For the record, not going back into it, but this is why I was trying to comment about the particular points Fleet was making at the time, so we could go through bit by bit instead of big block sections.
Just next question.
YouTube Minecraft Watcher asks, what if America lost the War of 1812? Say America lost in the Great Lakes and Britain retained the American capital. You're going to look at economic transfers, maybe? A different border between the US and Canada out in the west. But apart from that, there's no real scope for territorial changes. Like, I know a lot of people like to fantasize about New England being transferred back to Britain. That's just not gonna happen.
Parts of it, mate.
No,
Okay.
it's too integrated into America proper to
That's-
be.
I want to talk about the actual states, but there is quite a lot of contested areas of where New England starts and New Brunswick starts.
I mean, the borders might be readjusted. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
that's what I
probably. Yeah, okay. That's. I thought you were talking about the full. Yeah,
I
okay.
need to recheck something here because
Like there ain't gonna be the straight line out west.
okay, I need to look up. I'm going to try and do this quickly. 1812.
It is gonna be a. It is gonna be a hammer blow to U.S. pride, though, and it might have the
No,
knock-on.
I need to check a map because I'm remembering my history, but I'm not remembering it clearly. And you all are, if I'm remembering it correctly, you all are dramatically underestimating how devastating this is going to be for the U.S.
But I do think it's gonna make the U.S. spend more on its military, perhaps.
There may not be a U.S. is what I'm getting at.
That seems a little
Please.
extreme.
Well, that's why I
Definitely.
need to look at a map to make sure that my memory is correct of where I think the British gains and territory held is.
Don't forget, 1812 is still in these United States, not the United States.
Yeah, and it's still these United States. These United States after that war as well.
Yeah. You don't really get the United States until post Civil War.
Google, can you give me the maps I want, please? Because essentially my concern is my memory is that the Canadians came down from the south to enough of a degree that they actually captured or held significant parts of New England. Additionally, the campaign up the Chesapeake into Washington, D.C. means that they've captured significant parts of the Chesapeake Bay Basin, which means that they have significantly impacted the industrial and economic heartland of the United States. On top of that, there were movements inside the United States that were more than willing to go back to British rule if it meant a resumption of trade. And that is going to be amplified if the British forces are able to win definitively the War of 1812. It is on top of that, you're not going to have the westward expansion, especially if significant chunks of New England are kept, because New England is, even at this point, still the industrial heartland. It is also the port heartland of the United States. A lot of goods still get shipped transatlantically from New England. You would likely not see the U.S. government survive a 1812 that ends with gains from the Canadians starting in Canada and the capture of effectively the Chesapeake Bay Basin.
I mean, when you say the capture of and gains of, are you talking in toto, as in aka the British keeping those after the war, or are you talking about during the war itself? I just want to make it clear before I respond.
Scrolling up. Say America lost in the Great Lakes and British retained the American capital, which to me, I parse that as the
held it.
Yes, the British forces in those campaigns that spawned in those areas or terminated in those areas kept the terrain that they did, and losing the Great Lakes is huge.
I mean,
there's a reason the Great Lakes area is called the Rust Belt.
I mean,
the
first of all,
thing
the whole thing about retaining the capital, I think, is a little bit silly. Why does Britain need to retain Washington, D.C. in any peace deal? That just seems like needless land to occupy. Like, I agree.
I don't think it's retain as in retaining a peace deal. Because I am aware of what happened to D.C.
Oh, yes, I'm aware.
Where the British sailed up, burned it down, and left.
Yes. But
how I'm seeing this is that they managed to occupy it and stop the Union Army retaking it.
Okay, in that case...
So the British have taken and held the seat of federal authority.
In that case, then, I think you're looking at a redrawing of the boundaries. The redrawing of the boundaries in the north. I think it's going to depend on whether you get some sort of Dominion of New England or whatever the thing that came before Dominions were of New England returning to Britain. I think it's going to depend on the exact strength of those pro-British American political elite, as Ruinon has said. But me personally, I think you're looking at border revisions rather than any states in the Union returning to British rule, since the British will probably also want to return to trade, even without, because trade with the US is valuable to Britain. And they're also probably not...
Yeah. Go ahead. Finish.
And taking a large swath or accepting the defection of a large swath of the US's vital economic heart is probably a good way to make what remains hostile to a point that they will not return to trade with the British. And while, yes, you have the trade of the parts you've taken, in this case, in this example, New England, you don't have the trade from the rest, including valuable goods like cotton, etc., from the south, which the British textile industry is crying out for at this point as it expands rapidly with the invention of the high-pressure steam engine in this period of the 1810s.
Okay, right.
So
I do think you're getting ahead of yourself, because I think there's one thing that you've kind of forgotten.
Okay.
Federal authority in the Americas is incredibly fragile at this point. The amount of authority the federal government has over the states is very weak. If the
Practically
British
non-existent.
take and hold the federal capital for a couple of years, the states are going, the central government, the states are going to be operating independently. There's a not insignificant chance the US de facto crumbles into independent states.
Federal authority is weak, I grant you, but I don't think it's quite so weak to allow for that. Especially given that a realistic peace agreement would probably result in, like, there would be border corrections, there would probably be favorable trade terms, so no tariffs on US goods, that sort, which the British tried to push for in the peace conference but couldn't get. They probably will get that. There may be some border adjustments in the British favour around the Great Lakes and on the border with New England and New Brunswick, but I don't think you'll see the US lose access to the Great Lakes in toto, so I don't think that will be radically changed. If you do see a breakup in federal power, I think it won't be every state for itself, since the states of the South have a valid reason to turn to consolidate, since the one thing they fear not being able to put down by themselves as individual states is a full-on servile insurrection. It's their biggest fear. It's one of the reasons why, despite some of the strenuous arguments of being independent states under the Articles of Confederation, they all of them signed the Constitution rather than trying to stick with the Articles of Confederation or go their own way. They wanted this overarching federal state to provide them with manpower and materiel to put down their worst fear if it ever realized. And that's still true in this case.
To a degree.
Not really to a degree.
This isn't the run up to the Civil War. And B, at this point, if you remember correctly, you're still looking at stuff like the Army of Virginia, which is a army raised by the state of Virginia, not the federal government.
Yes.
A lot of these states still have their own armies.
Yes, that is true.
And what I can see happening is, especially if the Americans don't immediately, or even if the federal government even buckles immediately, or if the war goes on too long, de facto independence being declared. Just like, we've got our own army, we've got our own state. You've proven to be so incompetent, why the hell would we listen to you? You want us to be part of the Union, come and fight us for it. And like, you'd probably get states banding together. But if you break up federal authority, you've burned the capital. The seat of the presidency is gone. The president's dead. Probably.
I mean,
we can assume he escaped.
Yeah, but also, like...
Because
it
wasn't the president at the time in the army that came to take it back. So...
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Madison wasn't a field officer.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I would just like to hone in on something quickly if I can. Sorry, run on first then, and I'll hone in on what I want to hone in on.
I'd also like to note that Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and a good chunk of Maryland all voted against Madison, and the U.S. declared this war. If the federal government has been so, and also you're going to lose Michigan, Illinois, a chunk of Ohio, a chunk of Indiana, you're going to lose the Great Lakes, essentially, except for the little bit that Pennsylvania has access to.
And
a little bit of Ohio.
Why are you saying...
Michigan's not a state yet. Michigan's not a state yet.
Ruben,
It's
why are you so sure that the US is going to lose access to the Great Lakes? That seems overly extreme and not really in the British interest.
Because I'm going off of the question as written.
Yeah, but that's lost in the Great Lakes during the war, not during the peace deal.
Yeah, but actually,
Good God.
the Great Lakes are a territory that aren't settled properly yet.
And
And
additionally,
it's largely settled by Canadians.
as the question states, I will reread it to refresh the court's memory.
I know what it
Say
says.
America lost in the Great Lakes and Britain retained the American capital, which means that British gains in their Great Lakes campaigns are kept.
That's not... I thought we said that wasn't what was being happened. I thought we said that was during the war, not the peace deal afterwards.
Yes, but
Well, more importantly, the Great Lakes area is materially so rich that why would Britain ever think about giving it back to the US?
and remember that a lot of the Great Lakes, especially the coastal parts, are settled by Canadians. Because a lot of the American settlements in Michigan haven't been settled yet.
I mean,
So it's understandable that if the British are the ones with the presence there, they've actually driven the Americans out of where is it? Is it Detroit that's on the Great Lakes in Michigan?
Yeah. Detroit and Chicago are both on the Great Lakes.
Yeah, if
Milwaukee.
the Americans are being driven out
So
of
it's Buffalo.
Detroit and Chicago, the population there's Canadian.
I mean, okay, fair enough, but I still don't see... I'm not sure the Union collapses. That seems a little unrealistic.
It could. We're not saying it will, but there is a chance, because sadly to say, the federal government's identity is still pretty weak by that stage. States still have a lot of power over themselves.
And it's a very controversial law.
Yeah,
It's-
that is true.
Yeah, and essentially, okay, imagine the EU picks a war with much bigger power, and much bigger power takes a nice chunk of the Mediterranean coast and Brussels. Do you see the? And let's just. I know the EU can't declare war. I know. Let's say it can for the sake of the argument. Okay. Do you see the EU? If it signs a peace treaty where it hands over those territorial concessions, do you see the EU surviving in any meaningful capacity?
It's going to depend on how the aftermath of the war goes. It's possible.
But some parts of the EU are going to buck it.
Possibly.
optimistic, Fleet.
The amount of faith into the system is going to diminish quite a bit, and let's just say it might survive, but it won't survive in the state that we might recognize.
United
Just
States
like how
has a
the
very
United
different meaning.
States may survive, but it may not survive in the state that we think the United States would be. It could just be like the northern Appalachian East Coast area, and maybe some of the southern states just sort of said, you know what, we're not interested anymore. This is just, you know.
It might de-evolve into a glorified coalition.
Yes.
The
Because
South...
it kind of what it was.
Yeah, that's true, but I would say... I would say that the South, if the North does decide to go its own way and become this coalition, the South will, again, for the reasons I stated, bond together, because as I've said, they do want an overarching federal authority to handle the institution of slavery, and to be fair, this is a chance to enshrine it into law, and enshrine it into the Constitution, which they're probably not going to want to miss.
Eh,
It depends.
Not really, when it comes to the South.
It
there is enough of an anti-slavery movement yet for them to even consider that point.
I mean, the South literally was. It's not really prior to the. It's not till the 1850s that anti-slavery movements really start to combat the South's dominance and pro-slavery position of the federal government.
Hence, what makes you think
Yes.
that they're going to require a centralized, federalized government to deal with slave issues?
No, that's what I
Yeah,
said.
and the South will
that's-
adapt.
That's what I. That's literally what I said. The federal government's position on slavery, which is therefore the South's position on. That's what I said.
No. No. What I'm saying is, why would they need such an entity to deal with this issue?
Because what the one thing they fear most of all, as I've said, was basically a mass slave uprising across the entire South, which individual states would not be able to deal with.
Maybe.
No.
No, they
Maybe.
no
Nah.
maybe about it.
No.
No, maybe about it. It's written about in Southern journals. It was
Yes,
a fear among
but-
Southern aristocrats from the 1700s through to the
That's
Civil
in
War.
the context of them as America, as a part of the US.
No, that was as a
Because you've got to remember, the southern states will have survival instincts, right?
Some states will be
And
free to use
states
its own
can
forces.
has its own forces and can liberalize and shift culturally significantly when it's under existential threat.
The
In
South.
fact, there's also
the,
a
Like-
big
like-
the
thing.
Southern
like you
US
asked-
in the 1800s
Yeah, yes,
shifting
they
away
can.
from
They
racism.
did.
Please make me
They
laugh.
did. No, you wouldn't see like they're immediately, oh, we're happy friends now. But you would see stuff like the regulation of slavery.
Oh wow, that's so
You
good.
would probably, because the South would actually have to slowly shift away from chattel slavery.
That they can't. It's so ingrained in their culture. The
They
blacks,
can.
the blacks are
can.
chattel slaves. That's what they're there for. That's
Oh,
their purpose in
man.
life. That's the Southern US.
Ooh.
From the highest planter to the lowest Confederate white or Southern white, up until the Civil War, every single person in the South, the black is a chattel slave. That's his purpose in life. All of the Southern
They're
US.
not stupid.
And
They're
Fleet, you're
not
also
stupid.
wrong.
You're off the rockers.
There
here.
were black plantation owners, freemen black plantation owners who also owned slaves. And the white plantation owners were looking at how they treated their slaves like, holy crap, go a little easier on them. Literally. It's
Yeah.
The South is always going to be racist. The white man in the South is always, it doesn't matter what their like monetary or political station is between the two. The white man, the poorest white man in the South is always going to see himself as superior to the richest black man in the South. That is not going to change absent something like Reconstruction or something like the Civil Rights Movement. But to say that there wasn't already an existing framework for black freemen, black property owners in the South is just wrong. It's just incorrect. I'm
It's
sorry.
one of the strange things of the sad irony of Jim Crow is that it dug up and destroyed a lot of that ableness for stuff like black senators for the South, which was a thing.
Damn.
And
Well,
it's like,
the more you know.
like,
I
like-
wasn't aware that the South was actually more liberal prior to Jim Crow than it was after it. Apart from the whole
Well,
slavery
Why
bit.
did you make such statements before?
yeah, but right. The thing is, states are inherently going to do what they can to survive. And if surviving as a state means they've got to give blacks some rights, they will.
And if my memory serves me correctly, even before the Articles of Confederation, there were laws regarding prescribing certain limits with the treatment and handling of slaves. Whether or not they were enforced evenly and fairly is a completely different matter. I'm not even going to get into that. but the laws did exist. Again, the South does have a framework for regulating slavery, and the South is not a monolith when it comes to opinions.
I mean, I understand it. Well, as far as I was aware, and that's the important statement there, as far as I was aware, the South wasn't a monolith, except on the issue of slavery. As far as I was aware, that was the, and also the place of the black in the South. As far as I was aware, that was the one thing that they were somewhat monolithic on.
Okay, I would advise you, especially when you have what sounds like, to my ear, at least 2 Americans in the chat. Sometimes asking is better than stating.
Well, why? I understand that, but when you think you know something, why would you feel the need to ask? That's the problem with knowledge. Or rather, thinking you know knowledge.
Do what I do. Assume you're the dumbest person in the room and ask questions that also state your point.
Mhm.
It works very well, and usually you prove yourself wrong about being the dumbest person in the room. Sometimes you prove yourself about being right, and that's when you remember that God gave you 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth for a reason.
Well, I mean, he didn't because it doesn't exist. But anyway, moving on.
Moving on.
It's a saying, Fleet.
Knight 6. Yeah, it is a good saying, to be fair, though. Knight 6831 asks, and this is a question. This is a question I actually have no wheelhouse in / no say in. And honestly, I think this is Moe's turf. Knight 6831 asks, if Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai-shek don't come to power as they do, what happens to China?
It's a fucking mess. So, key thing, Chiang Kai-shek is really the one that majorly stabilized the warlord situation in the mid-20s. When the nationalist government really was just... it was practically irrelevant. If he does not come into power, you're gonna have an even more chaotic warlord era. That's just... And it will go so chaotic to the point where I am going to say I have no idea what the fuck's gonna happen. Because you got your silly clique, you got your Hulan clique and stuff like that. It is... Without Chiang Kai-shek, you're not gonna see any sort of unified... Or I shouldn't say... You're not gonna see the national government having remotely any sort of power whatsoever, because that's how fractured China is at the time. Of course, without Chiang Kai-shek, you might also get a really, really weird communist uprising or a communist party growth. The Communist Party really, really came together because of Chiang Kai-shek. So in 1926, Chiang Kai-shek actually went ahead and cooperated with a lot of the warlords, including the Communist Party, to go into the Northern Expedition, which is basically dealing with the big giant warlord in Manchuria. However, Chiang Kai-shek, midway through when he got to Shanghai, decided we gotta stop this and kill communists because they're trying to take over. And he's absolutely right about that point, by the way. That's how the whole entire Chinese Civil War kicked off to a stupendous level of massacre, in essence.
Mm-hmm.
Chiang Kai-shek is the reason why a good amount of the original Communist Party's leadership and stuff like that just don't survive, and Mao basically ends up getting having a much easier time climbing his way up to the party leader.
Catapulted to the
chain.
top.
Well, not to the top. He's up. He doesn't come into full power in the Communist Party until like 35. But a lot of people died, and he had a lot of hand on helping a lot of people survive the Long March.
Just very quickly, while there's a break, I need to do a quick PSA. Right, I say this every few ramblings, but I haven't said it for a while, so I'll say it again. Fleet is not an expert. Fleet does not know everything. Most of my panel are knowledgeable, but again, not all of us know everything. If you think anything we've said is incorrect, / you think we're wrong, please don't take our word for it. Go and do your own research and go and check up on it. Don't take everything we say as gospel, and definitely don't take anything I say as gospel.
Unless it's about the U.S. North American electrical system, and I'm speaking, you can take that as gospel.
Yes, but apart from that, like especially with the things about the war in Ukraine and the whole thing about the American South, it just felt worth reiterating. I don't know everything. I'm speaking from the knowledge I have. That isn't always right. I'm going off the knowledge I have. I don't do research for ramblings. I go off what I have, and I do research as questions come up. So again, that's the format of the show. That's how we run it. So again, like I say, if you think I'm wrong, if you think you want to go and do your own research, please do so. I've never claimed to be an infallible font of knowledge, and I don't plan to start now. But carry on.
I'm going to say this. Yeah, I'm going to say this. I have what you would probably call relatively surface level knowledge of the situation, because it is such a mess that it is really difficult for me to do a full deep dive into everything. I have surface level knowledge on this, so take some of this with a grain of salt, but I can tell you this, without those two, you definitely will not see the history of China occurring the way we see it in the 20s and the 30s. Those two are key players in terms of how the nationalist government actually acquires its power, and how the Communist Party comes to rise in terms of it, how we knew it. Because without Chiang Kai-shek, you're probably going to see a even more fractured central China, while the Manchurian warlords will just crumble the Japanese.
Yeah.
There's just no other way around it. And then Japan might actually have a pretty free army through China afterwards. It mostly depends on who steps up instead of Chiang Kai-shek in terms of how the nationalist government take if they ever require power and stuff like that. In terms of the communists, if Mao doesn't exist, we might actually there is a very high possible chance that we might just see the Communist Party, the Chinese Communist Party, as a Soviet bloc, because that's where a lot of the major communist, assistance comes from.
You're not going to get Maoism, is what you're saying, basically. That sort of spin-off of...
Yeah, that's 100%. You will 100% not get Maoism and stuff like that. It might actually just become a satellite state for the Soviet Union. Because a lot of Soviet advisors is in the Communist Party. In the Communist Party at the time, there's relatively good relationship between the two, and just overall, the Soviets are obviously backing the Communist Party at the time.
Yeah.
In terms of assistance and stuff like that.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add, or?
I'm currently just going through my head in terms of what I remember.
Have you got? I didn't realize you had a scroll wheel in your head, Moe. I want one of those. Be really handy.
I also volunteer to take first crack at Brackman's question.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, but I really want to go first.
Well, he's the
My
host. He
answer is
should go
going to be
first.
really, really simple, and it'll throw a cat in among the pigeons, and then you can take it to shreds.
The funny
That would
thing
be
is,
fun,
the
wouldn't it?
funny thing is, mine's probably going to cause outrage, but that whole bit of the line of full support from the government is what makes it viable. But you'll see what I mean when I get to it.
Yeah, that's about as much as I could give
Alright.
with my surface level of knowledge.
Okay, Brackman asks, what kind of air defense ship would you design for the Royal Navy today if you had the full support from the government? I would design a ship of around 15 to 17,000 tons with 261 cell blocks of Mark 41 VLS carrying SM6, basically carrying SM6 and the ESM and basically and of course the full Aegis combat system with 2 Phalanx Seaways, 1 fore, 1 aft, and CRAM, not CRAM, sorry, is it CRAM, I think? Yeah, CRAM. And then CRAM port and starboard on the wings, and 2 4.5s, 1 mounted fore, 1 mounted aft for the gun armament. And the reason that I am going with Aegis and not Aster 30 is, while Aster 30 is a great system and it does provide what the Royal Navy needs, if I am in charge and I have full government support, I'm taking the chance for us to actually get a limited amount of ballistic missile defense capability. And if I can get a Aegis combatant with Mark 41 strike length, which will of course give it some dual purpose capability, but, you know, it's more for the standard missile 6s, it's basically to get that extra capability of being able to do that ballistic missile defense. And of course, you know, Aegis with SM6 is just an exceptionally capable system. Yes, of course, it's not buying British with Aster 30. And of course, yeah, there are other issues besides. But the question does say I have full government support. And if I have full government support, then politely, I'm going to go out and get the absolutely best combatant I can. And at that point, that means Mark 41, standard missile, and Aegis for the air defense role. I'm sorry, but it just does.
My problem is 17,000 tons.
Because, look, I'm trying to fit 2 4.5-inch guns, a decent power plant, enough generation capacity for it all, the latest Aegis system, and 128 cells of Mark 41 on this ship.
So I'm going to put my tribute in. British Zumwalt, which already has a lot of automation in it, but the U.S. Navy doesn't want to use the automation because Congress. I hate Congress. With equivalent British systems swapped in, and the Automalera, what is it? Their 6-inch or 8-inch AGS equivalent on the deck. I want an air warfare destroyer. You're not getting better than a Zumwalt nowadays, unless I start from a complete clean sheet bleeding edge design.
Sorry, Scoot, you are right. Sorry, we are moving away from 4.5. Sorry, 5-inch 62. Yeah, sorry, I had forgotten about that move away from that. Thank you for that. But as for the reason why I have Phalanx, and RAM, Phalanx is there specifically not only as an additional point defense to work with CRAM, but it's also there to serve in a role, for example, against low-quality drones. Because you can rely on Phalanx to basically defeat a large number of low-quality drones without me expending any of my Mark 41s or any of my CRAM. Phalanx can just go, Burt down, Burt down, Burt. Oh, it's all of your drones are gone. Whoops. And I still have all of my CRAM and Mark 41.
Yeah, but why
quickly comment?
Why use Phalanx when I can have a 6-inch fragmentation shell?
Well, we have the 5-inch as well, but look, I want an extra layer. And I also like the Burt. The Burt is nice.
Fair enough.
No, wait. I mean, Gallery Officer, we do have Mark 41, so we can quad pack ESSM if we want to. But my primary thing with this ship is we have CRAM as well, but again, those are limited. They are more limited magazine depth than something like Phalanx. Now, my other alternative is having something like a 57 or 3-inch gun in place of Phalanx, but I've already got 2 5-inch, so I don't want that, and they can't really do the dual-purpose role of being that low cost per shot / large magazine depth weapon to deal with those drones and lower level threats. And the reason they're 4.5 is to put 2 barrels onto a target, ideally, if the ship is broadside.
You could probably use a 57.
I mean, Scoop does have a point. There is that. It was just a...
I also like to comment, by the way, Flake. The capability you've suggested does not require 17,000 tons.
I was hedging, all right. I don't know modern warship displacements.
You should probably look at the Siege on the Great class. The Koreans are fucking insane.
Knight, Asta 3 Block 2 BDM is not as capable as SM6. It's not. It just isn't. I'm sorry, but it just is not. SM6 can reach out and touch something 460 kilometers away in terms of anti-air threat slash and that's the publicly released range for the air threat slash missile threat. Asta 30 just cannot even come close to that level of range. Asta 30 can reach out and touch something 150 kilometers away, which, while it is pretty good, it doesn't have the... It's still a 300 kilometers short of SM6.
But yeah, you should look at what the Koreans are capable of doing on 10,000 tons.
Yeah. Like Knight, for the first time, I'm just going to address this. But look, Asta 30 is a capable system. It's cheaper than SM6, and it does for the first time give the Royal Navy standoff air defense capability in a real sense, with its 150 kilometer range. But I'm sorry, it is not an equivalent to SM6 at all. No. Although you are correct in probably having Dragonfire and Sea Scepter as the close-in systems. Although I don't know if Sea Scepter can quad pack into Mark 41. Although we could probably make a quad pack for Sea Scepter that could fit into 41.
And the reason I say Zumwalt is because it's got the sensors, it's got the power plant, and it's got the best room for expansion that we currently have active on the globe today. Zerjan the Great has got some wickedly deep magazines, but I think it is also an Aegis destroyer.
Yeah.
Well, apparently
it is a much heavier build Burke, basically.
And while I do agree that with Sea Daughters that the best air defense ship is 4 or more 100,000 ton supercarriers,
agreed.
that while I believe that is stretching to the point of tearing the meaning of air defense warship, air defense ship, as intended by Brackman.
It's alright, just take the Japanese way of naming convention.
Alex, I'm typing this out as well. Alex, I have to go off listed ranges when I'm saying stuff like this. I can't go off speculation. Even if SM6 was listed prior to its current usage, which proved its range beyond what was stated previously, SM6 Asta 30 has not done that yet. So until it does, I can't go and say, well, it could have the same range as SM6, which we now know has extended range. I have to go off what is publicly available. I have the range listed here on Wikipedia as 450 kilometers in the air defense role. If I'm reading this right, and I think I am. But either way, I suppose it is kind of much of a muchness between SM6 and Asta 30. Either way, I still want Mark 41 though, because haha, funny tube I can put things in.
Yeah, but Mark 57 exists.
But basically, to summarize and simplify without getting into the teeth of weapon systems, it would be a 17,000 ton. Sorry, it would be a ship of a size to carry the following. Since Moe is so keen on correcting me, a ship of the size to carry the following: 2 5-inch guns, 2 128 cells of Mark 41. Bearing in mind what Scoot has said, and he does know a little bit about this sort of thing. Probably 2 57mm guns. Super firing over, well, either mountain fore and aft, sort of in between probably after the fore and aft VLS cells, which are probably behind the fore and aft 5-inch guns. And 2 sets of... I probably want something else as well. So I probably will have... Since the British do still operate phalanx, that's probably kind of what I'm going to have to go with. I don't think we have anything else coming in to fill that last-ditch point defense role in the Royal Navy. So it probably will still be Sea-Wiz I go for.
You have to choose the goalkeeper, I guess.
Goalkeeper has the kind of overheating problem. But either way, so 128 cells of Mark 41 to carry whatever missile we choose to put in them. 2 5-inch fore and aft, 2 5-inch, 1 fore, 1 aft, 2 57mm, 1 fore, 1 aft. 2 20mm Sea-Wiz, 1 on each wing. Probably mounted on the superstructure. And that would be what I want for the ideal air defense ship. Let me have a look, Alex. To be fair, I haven't looked at Asta. Let me have a look. Oh, yeah. It does say greater than 150 kilometers. I have completely missed that symbol. Never mind. Oh, well. So, yeah, Asta 30 does have slightly more teeth than I thought. Never mind. Fleet can't read. Oh, well. What else is new? Get glasses, I guess. Lol. Oh, well. Never mind. No helos. We could probably
maybe trade your American education for a British one. Then we would teach you how to read.
Now, listen here. I take that as an actual... That's a little bit insulting.
What, calling you American?
Yes. Or calling my education American.
The problem is you're both right. Moving on swiftly. Paul Amos, given the questions about Sea Vixen, etc., how would you change the makeup of the British aero industry to maximize the future without the cost of numerous companies competing for government monies? How does that cost the British government money?
How would you change the makeup of the British air? Honestly, I would just speedrun the merging of the emergence of the conglomerate that we now know as BEA Systems. Probably not under that name, probably not in quite the same form, but creating a not quite the same monolith as we know it, but more of an overarching structure under which all of the design bureaus and individual companies can shelter. So that
basically, you're nationalizing your air defense corporations.
Kind of. It's more so to kind of enable the knowledge base to be retained as much as possible and provide protection from project cancellations by having a big tent they all sit under that gives out money, ideally.
From a direction.
What did you say, Foxo?
You're going at it from the wrong direction.
Please, go ahead. I'm actually interested to hear what you have to say. You're quite knowledgeable on this era.
You need to prune the fucking tree.
Oh, wow, you actually... I was tempted to go for that, but I thought that'd be a little bit extreme, but please. Since you are kind of espousing an idea I was going to go for, please go right ahead.
You need to get... The issue is the British aerospace industries for military aircraft. It's set up on very similar to how it was set up 20 years ago. And that worked when you had the demand of the British Empire. The British Empire's demand has flatlined. And you run into the issue like de Havilland gets hit by hardware. Instead of consolidating to 3 big companies, they all get small. Which leads to the issues that de Havilland has with the T-Vexen, because they're a lot smaller than they were.
Yeah.
And was devoted to Havilland Comet and what gonna sound paradoxical, but you need to centralize and conglomerate the British air industry into 2, possibly 3 big players.
Basically, do what America did in the 90s.
Yeah, because the British government tried to keep the rest of them alive. There was just no money.
Yeah, we basically have to accept that we basically need to try and push them to conglomerate rather than lose them completely. We need to push them to conglomerate by force if necessary.
The British government owns enough of them; they can force them to conglomerate.
Yeah, but do so in a manner that tries to save as many of them as possible.
Yeah, so you're nationalizing.
Yeah, but are you aware of Royal Ordnance?
Yes.
And how that for quite a while was an actual company, as basically a crown corporation.
No, that I was not aware of. I thought it was just owned by the government outright.
Yeah, it functioned as a crown corporation. Which is why you get stuff like quite a lot of Royal Ordnance was owned by Vickers.
Hey, Fleet.
Yeah.
Sorry to step on you here. I'm sending you a link via DMs. You're being formally and firmly and officially instructed to check that link immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so British Aeronautics.
I have checked that link. But I do think it's a good link.
Send it to him in DMs.
Okay, right.
He'll have a written record of it that way.
All right. I assume you mean
And
Alex, yeah?
Foxo can keep moving on.
Essentially, you need to cut out all the bad vines. It's strange because you arguably need to kill off Blackburn early because they're costing the British government a lot of money. They're also making good shit. De Havilland is making questionable stuff. English Electric is a monolith that nobody wants to fuck with. It's in the name English Electric.
Like General Electric, but
Imagine if a single corporation controlled 80% of the American power grid.
General Electric and Westinghouse.
Then decided they were making so much money, the CEO could afford to develop a 6th generation aircraft on his own pocket. That's what the Lightning
Sort of
was.
General Electric.
People forget the Lightning exists because the CEO wanted to go fast. Like, that's the state British aeronautics is in at this point. Actually centralize it, but centralize it before you can get the single monolith.
You might end up with 2, what does it say, Foxo? 2 or 3 somewhat monolithic entities once we're done.
To maintain
That's better than one.
But it's also
No,
better
not
than
really.
the alternative, which was a lot of entities that are
firms.
dying.
Because by the time they're all folded into BAE, they are so small. Even if they were a bunch of them conglomerated together, they wouldn't survive.
Yeah, whereas if we do it now...
At this point, they are still big enough to survive.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Especially if with de Havilland, the British government gets their boot off their neck.
And also, they
And
actually
they actually
buy.
allowed de Havilland to export.
And
Buying wasn't the issue, it was the exporting.
they also promised they buy VC-10 and didn't bloody buy VC-10. VC-10 was a beautiful aircraft.
But let de Havilland export, they bought the market for it.
Yes.
I have now learned why Eaton Cutler Hammer make locking differentials. I understand so much more now.
Anyway, next question.
Of course, they're in
What is the next question, Jim?
Your Mo waifu.
My question.
Whoopee.
What cannons would the Black Pearl and the Flying Dutchman have to actually damage HMS Dauntless during the final showdown in the movie? Could they actually mount such weapons and operate them effectively?
They are
32 pounders. Next question.
No, they could also carry double shot of 24 pounders at that close range. And if she's not
But canonically, they carry 32 pounders, and 32 pounders can absolutely wreck most ships.
Yes, but realistically they couldn't. But yes, either way, Boxer was correct. Next.
Oh no, there was East Indiamen that carried 32s.
Yes, but
Not that number of them.
yes. YouTube Minecraft Watcher. What if Pepsi kept the Soviet ships they were given in the 1980s? Say the government allowed it and Pepsi maintained it in peacetime. Pepsi only bought those ships as a substitute for hard currency. They didn't have the berthing space or the Also, those ships were death traps. Quite literally, they were held together by rust and hope.
Yeah, and the Chinese
Hang
tried to
on,
buy
what
them off them.
exactly did they buy?
A lot of old, outdated stuff.
Yeah, but bear in mind, this is the 80s. This is the Soviet fleet as it's at its height. This is when you've got stuff like the Kirovs coming in, like,
It's
like-
a lot of their old 60 stuff. But I mean, to answer the question, what's Pepsi going to do if they're allowed to keep it? Sell it to China.
yeah,
That's what they wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, Pepsi Cola has absolutely zero interest in having a fleet of warships. It might keep a couple of the shiniest ones as advertising pieces.
none of
Maybe,
none of them,
possibly.
none of them were shiny. None of them were
I
shiny.
know none of them are shiny, but I'm just saying we have not, we're only just now getting really into the level of cyberpunk corporate dystopia where the corporate military brought to you by Remco is becoming ever more a reality or a likelihood.
You mean real
Although
likelihood, right?
Instead of Max Tac, we're probably going to get the Pharaoh Plague. But anyway, Pepsi has no, why? Why is it just why? Here's the problem. If Pepsi keeps these warships and they use them for anything like their intended purpose, that means Pepsi can be held civilly liable because Pepsi does not have sovereign immunity.
Mm-hmm.
So that means Pepsi can get sued.
No, you don't
Pepsi does
understand.
not want to get sued.
These subs can carry nuclear torpedoes.
Pepsi does not want to deal with the Department of Energy.
It's obvious Pepsi will hold the US coastline hostage so that they can kill their rivals, Coca-Cola.
Why do you think they bought Taco Bell? Fun fact, if you didn't know, Pepsi owns Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and KFC.
Yeah.
You're welcome for that.
Asterix, they only own the American branch of Pizza Hut.
It's a bit like Mars in Europe.
My point stands. YouTube Minecraft
Because
Watcher
Pizza Hut
has,
UK is owned by Tesco's.
YouTube Minecraft Watcher has withdrawn his next question. He got it answered on Thursday because he was aiming to get it answered by Dr. Clark.
Oh.
I know, I was there when the deep lore was written. Because according to one of our panelists, I'm 40,000 years old. I'm older than the Emperor.
And counting. And counting.
No, you're not 40,000, you're 14,000. You were there when Gilgamesh walked the earth.
Yeah,
I
I've
don't-
met Big.
I don't think you're old, Ruinon. I think you're all
I've
right.
met Big E. He's still an asshole.
Lee,
Yeah, where do you think you got the big shoulders from, Runon?
Lee, you're French. You lost your perception of time. 'cause
I-
it's bourgeois.
I am not.
I tell you, yeah. I mean, you look at Hosh, and it feels like you've been staring at Hosh forever, and in reality, it's been like 5 seconds.
Oh, for the love of God. Anyway, right.
What I mean is, it's the fact that the concept of time itself is an authoritarian concept
Oy. Right.
that has unjust power over the human mind. Therefore,
so-
to be truly free in the spirit of
Okay, who
Okay.
muted her? You muted her.
I did.
All right.
Your typical guttery officer. Question 8. What?
Whoa, hold on,
Admiral-
hold on, just a minute. I'm just going to quickly address the question above it. YouTube Minecraft Watcher, what information do you have on DD-863 USS Steineger, currently sitting next to a veteran who served
It's been
aboard
answered.
her? Has it?
You mean the one that was explicit that Runon
Yeah, I
literally
just
just
talked
talked about?
I just said he withdrew it because he got it answered on Thursday, Fleet.
Oh, whoops.
Jesus Christ.
Look, we can all laugh at Fleet expense. It's what I'm here for, all right? I'm comedic
Not
relief even on
necessarily.
my own show.
Like,
even on my
even
own
when-
show.
No, laughing at your expense is fair enough. But when you hit when the laughter of echoing gods at this point have went,
Hey,
this is happening too much.
Hey, I
Perhaps
cause,
we need to start sending the Harlequins to just deal with this.
hey, I cause humor to the divine. What do you know? Anyway,
That's
so
not what you're doing.
Typical Gunner Officer asks, what if Admiral Mikawa during Savo Island ignored the cruiser battle line since he has the element of surprise and slipped through to the USN cruisers and causes havoc to the USN transports and auxiliaries off Guadalcanal? Do you think it'll have a more devastating and long-lasting effect for the Guadalcanal campaign? On
Think
the
about
one...
this one. Sorry, Fleet, but I'm just going to say this. Think about this really, really hard. If the United States Marine Corps Assault Force loses its transports at the early stages of the Guadalcanal campaign, what do you think
Where's
is
my
going to happen?
Guadalcanal campaign?
I was about to say, ain't much of a campaign anymore, is it?
Well... This is the thing.
Well,
Like,
At that point, they can't launch the assault if their transports have been badly mauled.
the assault has already started.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
there's...
or-
Or you've got a problem.
You got a
You're
different
wrong.
problem.
yeah, or they have to scramble to get whatever shipping capacity they have out there so that they don't have what forces they do have on the beach get enveloped and crushed.
That is true, but I will also point out there is a silver lining for the Allies in this scenario.
Is there?
Yes.
I gotta hear this.
If Mikawa has slipped past the USN cruisers and therefore not engaged them to retain the element of surprise, what do you think the USN cruisers and Commonwealth ships with them are going to do when the transports start exploding and Japanese cruisers are silhouetted against the backdrop of the exploding and burning transports? They're going to fall on them.
Statistically, shoot each other.
But now, though, the problem is, oh, great, the Allies can shoot them. The
No.
same thing they were probably going to do beforehand.
No,
Except
I am
now
going to
most
point this
transports are
out.
gone.
And they're also going to be throwing live munitions in the direction of their transports.
Friendly fire
as it-
might occur.
not
And
at
as it
the-
is, if memory serves for Savo Island, friendly fire did occur as written.
Yes, but... Okay, a few things. First of all, the US cruisers are not getting their first warning as torpedoes exploding under them, and keep in mind, they have no knowledge that the Japanese are there at all when the first explosions occur and the first casualties occur, and then the Japanese fire with their guns sighted improperly, immediately inflicting more damage on the US. The difference here is that the USN forces engaging in the first Battle of Savo Island, along with the Commonwealth forces also present there, are still unengaged. They will have time to come to action stations, because they will know, okay, the Admiral Mikawa, or whatever force is there, is engaging our transports, come to action stations, bring us about, get ready to fight. So there's that. First. Secondly, the Japanese will probably still be engaged with the forces, with the transports, and at this point, the Japanese, well, first of all, at Savo, the Japanese are outnumbered anyway. They have 5 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 1 destroyer, versus 6 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 15 destroyers. And lest we forget, the Japanese light cruisers, except for the flagship, are, as a one, weaker than the counterparts they're fighting. If the Americans can get into, if the Allied forces can get into a proper stand-up night action against the Japanese forces, without the element of surprise the Japanese inflicted on them in the historical battle, especially given the advantage in destroyer numbers the Allies possess, it is highly likely that Mikawa's forced, given that it is now inside the perimeter, rather than on its outskirts and able to disengage. If it makes it out at all, it'll be a token fraction of what entered to engage the transports.
Grossly biased.
Given the force disparity, not really.
You're also assuming that the Goth is not smart enough to lob long lances at the surface force and shells at the transports.
Even in a pincer scenario like this, where they almost encircled, they can still smash their way out.
Yeah.
Saying that they will be reduced to a token force that's not how naval combat works, unfortunately.
The Japanese are trained for night fighting. The Americans aren't particularly good at it.
Yes, but the Americans
And
aren't
the
the only
Japanese
ones
also-
there.
And
But the Commonwealth... Go on, Renan.
But also, too, the Commonwealth has less of a problem with this. The U.S. has a problem with this. The Japanese don't have a problem with this. The forces at Savo Island, of those that are in the mindset for war, the Japanese are on the edge of that one, followed by Commonwealth, then followed by the U.S. The U.S. Officer Corps is still not quite at full timber warfighting yet. And the reason I placed the Commonwealth as second, not equal with the Japanese, is because a lot of those assets were cycled into the we're not actually shooting at each other area of the war.
Yeah.
And yes, I know as we get into Guadalcanal, we're getting a little bit later where there's been churn and such. But
It's still not quite the same thing.
it's not as strong as Royal Navy Mediterranean Fleet or Home Fleet, the escort forces in the North Atlantic. Additionally, I will freely admit here, I do not remember the deployment maps for First Savo, but it is likely that the American CO or the Allied CO has got their forces biased towards where they think the IJN is going to come from. If the IJN has gotten in between that shield wall of Allied combatants to access the Allied transports, they can just go out the tail end. And there's no, I've done this, granted, it's wargaming. It's not reality. But when I'm saying wargaming, I'm talking actual rolling dice wargaming, not wargaming World of Warships. You can fire torpedoes in one direction and run and gun in the other direction.
Yeah.
And
I will point out that my whole premise has been operating under a qualifier, which I will now state, because I think I've realized now that you gentlemen, and lady, of course, ladies, have not been operating under the same qualifier, so I will state this. My qualifier was that, given the way the question was phrased, that the Japanese force was sticking around, either stopped or slowed, to destroy as many transports as they possibly could. Whereas you lot seem to be operating under the probably more tactically sound and probably more likely outcome that they literally do a drive-by. They do not stop, they do not slow, they do a drive-by and then bugger off as fast as they can.
Where
Which is
does it
basically
say
what
in
they-
the question they stay?
It says cause havoc
It also
among
Right.
the USN transports and
That
auxiliaries.
does not mean you
it also
stay.
doesn't take many
It's
hits
what
to
I
sink a
took.
transport.
It's what I took from the question, Dragon. That's my interpretation. I am allowed to interpret things the way I want, and you're not allowed to get angry at me for interpreting a thing differently than you do. Not everyone thinks the way you do. Please stop being angry about it all the time.
I'm getting annoyed, not angry, that you wait till you're halfway through the question to put qualifiers in.
Sometimes
I have no problem
I sometimes forget to.
with
It's
you
just-
interpreting things
It's
different.
it's
That's
just
what
the
it's
way
all
I
about.
am. It's just the way I am. I don't always remember to put things in. I sometimes just assume it's the way I am. So it's just I thought you would be used to
No
it by
offense,
now.
but it's not a case though of every now and then it's coming up more almost every other question.
Well, yes, because that's just the
It's
way I am.
it's actually increasing in
Yeah.
commonality.
Well, yes, but that's just the way I am. So it just is what it is. There's no. It just is what it is.
So
But going back to it,
Assuming they do just drive by and run, then yes, they're just gonna.
see, Dodgers, can you please just stop making comments on every single little disagreement?
Like we're not.
Because that's getting a bit tiring.
We're not a unified polity. Dragon is allowed to disagree with me, and he does have a valid comment. Just because I have a way of things doesn't mean his criticism is any less valid. Like, he's allowed to comment on things. I would rather him do so than not. That's
And
what
Sea
makes
Otter,
Ramblings the way it is.
While none of us are getting paid to do this, and therefore it's debatable whether or not we can call it our profession, this is technically a professional beef.
Yeah, we're not...
And also, believe it or not, we actively like Fleet. We want to see him improve. That's when he keeps making a common mistake over and over and over. It's the case of this is why
I get out the wiffle ball bat.
It's why
Like,
we
this is the
keep
thing.
mentioning
And
it.
And also, if Dragon wasn't here to keep me in line, good lord, I'd be fucked off halfway to Sunday.
yes,
I have to do it.
Flee, hence why things get messed when I've got to be the one to put my foot down.
Look, me and Dragon and Foxo, we do come to blows every now and then, but you'll notice...
Every now and then.
But, look, just let me... Look, but...
Let Fleet finish. I'm curious.
But...
Can I just be a snarky cunt once every rambling?
But... We
I think you
never...
meant that quote
but-
at the time.
But...
Go on, Fleet.
It never comes to swearing. It never goes beyond raised voices. It never, ever gets personal. Ever. So, it's just part of Ramblings. It's just what we do. And I wouldn't have it any other way, politely.
I really wish I could bind buttons to my stream decks that would populate with whoever's in a voice call, and it would just allow me to tap them to server mute those people. And it's not just the people on this panel; it's in many of the more than 3 people voice calls.
Because it's CDODs, it's who we are, and
And
how
so
we
that's
interact.
But
why-
it is getting annoying when you keep fucking going on and 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 on.
yeah, we get it.
and on.
Fox out.
Now you're going on and on and on and on and on and
Now,
on.
please.
Dangers waiting. What? Sorry.
Walking down the boulevard, the shadows dancing in the
Bruno, get the shield wardens.
That was a good way to break the
Stop putting them under the Imperial Palace.
that was a good way to break the tension, and we're back to normal.
Oh,
All
Walking
right.
down the
So-
boulevard.
Anyway,
Returning to the question.
Anyway, yeah, return to the
Abominable.
question. Now that we've broken the whole tension, with a little bit of journey.
Can I make
Assuming-
a quick comment?
Yeah.
So, what happened historically after Mikawa defeated the USN cruisers?
He retired in good order with pretty much with his historical no losses.
And
Yeah.
what happened to the US transport fleet?
Let me have a look. The transport ships were ordered to withdraw, but they stuck around until mid-afternoon to offload supplies. But then they did withdraw.
And what happened for the next 6 weeks afterwards?
The transports that came, the supplies that came in small convoys during daylight hours.
No. There was no transport to Guadalcanal for the next 6 weeks. Sinking the transport would have been irrelevant. The entire argument is irrelevant down to the sheer fact that killing the cruisers disabled the U.S. ability to commit naval presence in Guadalcanal. It doesn't matter if they have a transport fleet or not. You destroy the cruiser force, the U.S. cannot operate in or at least in the littoral range of Guadalcanal. Second, what naval asset did the Japanese have in Guadalcanal? During the early period of Guadalcanal.
Also, to be blunt, it was the less risky move. The cruisers were right there. The cruisers were
it absolutely is.
Yeah, the cruisers were right there. He didn't have to risk trying to get past them. He had an open route to seaward to escape if he needed to.
What Mikawa basically did is he knocked out the U.S. capability to contest the Japanese at night, thus giving the Japanese free reign to actually move things into Guadalcanal during nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
If he didn't do that and just knocked out a U.S. transport fleet that the U.S. could just replenish a month later because transport ships infinitely easier to build, and the U.S. has a large fleet of transport ships.
And also,
they don't have a lot of high-speed ships, but.
And also, politely, just to counter some, if anyone says, the ships have to come from the US, there are Australian merchant vessels that are seagoing but normally coastal that can be hoovered up to form merchant traffic to Guadalcanal if needed. There is spare merchant capacity in the area that can be requisitioned.
Now, granted, the supply on the ships is a hell lot more important and it's a lot more difficult to procure. You're not going to see an immediate just hoover up Australian ship and move more ammo or supply into Guadalcanal that way. You're still going to, if you lose the auxiliary fleet, it's still going to be a while before you could reacquire all the supply you need and bring them over to Guadalcanal. Or maybe they really scrounge up something out of New Caledonia or wherever and dump it to wherever the Marines have. But considering the fact that, the U.S. Navy pretty much sets no merchant activity for the next 6 weeks anywhere near Guadalcanal, should tell you how important it was for the Japanese Navy to completely and utterly annihilate the cruiser force.
I mean,
to the point where the U.S. Well, you understand what I'm saying.
I mean,
it's gone to the point where the U.S. Navy just...
The strength of the victory is huge.
Wait.
4 heavy cruisers sunk. It's massive.
Wait. I will mute you too. I have no problem doing it.
It's all right. He's trying to apply contextual
I'm trying to reinforce Moe's point here. 4 heavy cruisers sunk. That's a massive Axis victory. One of the largest of the war.
And more importantly, the main arm of the IJN isn't there yet. Think about this. For the first 2 weeks of the Guadalcanal campaign, the IJN is actually completely and utterly outnumbered. Because the U.S. Navy has carrier task force operating in Guadalcanal, or at least around Guadalcanal. Whatever remains of the IJN fleet after Midway, it's not anywhere near the region. They need to come all the way from it. Like, the closest reinforcement you get is Trunk, and Trunk is, or the remainder of the main fleet is not in Trunk at the time. They're still in Japan. That's why it takes like
where are the Congos?
20, 30. Still in I'm fairly sure the Congos are still in Japan at the time.
Fair enough. Keep going. Just wanted to check on where they were.
But my point is that think about the gap between Operation Watchtower and Battle off Salo Island and the Battle of Eastern Solomon. Think about that time. That is the amount of time where Mikawa actually has free reign during the night, and he probably could have done a little bit more action after sinking the cruisers. Or at least like the couple days afterwards. However, he didn't, which is understandable. It's completely out of caution. He knows he's completely outmatched in terms of ships available. We're talking about, he probably knows there's American Carrier Task Force sitting out, out of nearby Guadalcanal, and he's not just going to randomly sail down unless he knows there's a reason to. But effectively, he has to conserve his forces, and him sinking the cruisers inflicted a hell of a lot more damage to the U.S. Navy in terms of its operational capability around Guadalcanal than him sink out, even if he outright sinks every single transport in that transport fleet. There is nothing there that the U.S. couldn't just go and be like, it hurts, but we could probably scrounge something back up.
Yeah.
You're not going to just randomly find more cruisers and be like, okay, we lost 4 heavy cruisers, we could probably, find something and throw it in, or throw that back in there, like, in a month or so.
Mm-hmm. What I will also point out that is also even more makes Savo Island even more impressive is that the 6 heavy cruisers that the Allies have and the 4 they lost, they're all full-sized late treaty heavy cruisers. They're things like New Orleans class. There's Canberra, which is a county class. And there's other ships like that. But apart from Takao, all the heavy cruisers the Japanese bring are their small 8-inch gun-armed ships.
I wouldn't call them small.
No, but you get what I mean. They're not equivalent capability. So they trade, because they do lose one of them on the way back to their base to a submarine. So they trade one older 8-inch gun heavy cruiser for 4 fairly modern and powerful Allied units, which makes the victory even more impressive. Sea Dodders, the reason I say it's unlikely is that it's not so much that they don't need supplies. It's more the fact that it's probably not ammunition and small arms they need. It's stuff like food and medical supplies that are going to become short, and fresh water that are going to become needed. Not so much
artillery shells.
Yeah, not so much ammunition and artillery shells.
Now, to be fair, the Marines did start running out of ammunition. However, that's mostly down to the fact that they didn't receive any supply shipment for 6 weeks. And you know how Japanese like to fight their wars.
They do be charging, though.
So, yeah.
Hey, this is good rambling so far. I'm enjoying it. This is great.
It is... The Marines did basically have the equivalent of the transport practically sunk for 6 weeks. There was never going to be any supply in either of the situation.
No.
It's just that in the situation where you sink the auxiliary transports instead of the cruisers, the Japanese now outright have no naval superiority over Guadalcanal.
Whereas by sinking those 4 cruisers, they actually gained it for a limited
Pretty
period.
much. And it actually allowed the IJN to actually move troops onto Guadalcanal instead of perhaps getting attacked and harassed by a strong cruiser force. There were probably some destroyers hovering around that might harass the convoy in real life, but I don't actually remember the full detail whether they did or not. However, just my point is, naval superiority over Guadalcanal was established because the cruisers were sunk. Sinking the transport fleet does nothing to the overall strategic effect of the war, other than just maybe you lost a whole bunch of medical equipment and stuff like that. And the Marines probably got really angry at the fact that, the U.S. Navy somehow lost all their supply under their nose.
Yeah. A typical gunnery officer asks, do you think the Soviets copied the idea of the Kirov from the USS Long Beach design? Large hull with large missile magazine and nuclear power. No, not even remotely.
Convergent design.
No, it's not even
It's
convergent
called
design.
Design evolution.
Yeah, it's not even convergent design, Ruinon. They have Long Beach, and most US guided missile cruisers are far more configured for the air defense role. While Russian cruisers do also have that role as well, Russian missile cruisers have a far heavier focus on anti-ship strike than their US counterparts do. Far heavier.
Because what you're basically suggesting right now, gunnery officer, is that people copy. It's the equivalent of people copy Dreadnought.
Don't remind me of that. I've got to come up with a whole scenario
Which is
about that.
not the case.
Yeah.
It's just the next logical step of how to build warships.
And it's worth pointing
It's
out.
not the case unless you're the Japanese.
And it's worth pointing out that the Russians have been building cruisers alongside the US during the Cold War. Like, they have a tranche of designs. Depending on which source you go to, the Crestas are either cruisers or frigates, depending on who you ask. But the stuff like the so the Crestas were where it started post they were sort of it's kind of similar to the US in that sense. So they started out with stuff like the Crestas, which were the Crestas and the Kinders, which are either frigates or cruisers depending on who you ask. But again, it's fairly similar to the US in that it's in that sense, in that they started out as one thing and then were reclassified as another. But that lineage does lead to although you do get divergence. Once you get past the Crestas, you do get the which are large anti-submarine ships. Although technically they're guided missile cruisers as well. It's complicated. But you do get the first pure missile cruisers in the form of stuff like the that are actually just missile cruisers and not anything else, in the form of the Slavas and the Kirovs.
Kirovs, by the way, weighs twice as much as Long Beach.
Like, it's
like, copy is not the correct word for it.
they're not even really convergent evolution either, because the Russians envisage their cruisers doing different things. Like, if it's the
It's
Crestas...
just-
It is convergent evolution, though. Because it's the basic principle of, to use an oceanic example, if a crab's the best way to survive and fit the niche, multiple different species will turn into crabs.
In the end, we will
Go
all
there.
become crab.
We're
And
going
it's
there.
It's like, that is how you build a missile cruiser to survive that era. Both sides are coming from two different species of cruiser. They're going to turn into a very similar thing because that's the niche they exist in.
Well,
I
it's
would
also
question-
too the niche of this is how you design a nuclear powered cruiser that is whose armament is primarily long range missiles.
Yeah.
There's
It's like-
going to have overlap there.
Yeah.
Whether it's area air defense missiles or theater air defense missiles or area anti-shipping missiles, it will impact the sensors, but as far as the hull form and to one extent or another hull size is moderately irrelevant.
A crab's a crab.
Yeah, they are going to start to look awfully similar.
Fox, I know you like seafood, but
I will
You've been
just
mentioning crabs a lot
No,
lately.
seafood tastes
I
great.
will just point out that
Yeah,
I
but
was.
it's not a joke. Things
I know
do
it's
turn
not.
into crab,
Um,
and conversion evolution's a thing.
I know, but
just,
you've had this same discussion on 3 servers in 3
Um,
days.
I was just
We will
waiting
all
for.
become crab.
I was just waiting for someone who was more knowledgeable than me to say it, and so someone has. The reason that I say it depends who you ask on why the Kinders, the Crestas, and the Karas are called cruisers or not. The Russians themselves didn't consider them cruisers. But the Western navies did because they aligned more with what they considered cruisers in the missile era.
I
And
Where-
this is why the nations is not important.
thought the Crestas were FFGs.
This is the Russians didn't the Russians considered them large anti-submarine warfare ships.
Which is basically what NATO designate frigates.
Whereas because of their missile throw weight and the size of them, the West tended to classify them as cruisers, even though they really weren't. But that's why I said I was waiting for the exact specifics. But that's why I opened with depends who you ask. But the Slavas and the Kirovs definitely are missile cruisers.
Oh yeah, definitely. We're talking about 30,000 tons and 300 missiles.
And basically the difference between Western and Eastern missile cruisers is basically their heavier missile throw weight. Because you will notice a lot on Slava, the VLS cells for... is it Grumble? Or is it Grumble that's on the Kirovs? I forget. Yes, it's Grumble. Yeah, that's Grumble. The circular VLS cells aft for Grumble. I will just bring that up quickly on Ramblings, because thank God for Sea-Power, we have good 3D models of these ships to actually bring up. So yeah, so the Slavas, because the whole point of these cruisers is that you can put them at the center of a task group, and they are capable of fulfilling area air defense and heavy throw weight strike for that task group. So after the funnels, that's the Grumble cells there. And then, of course, you've got the clear and distinctive tubes of the Slava's primary missile throw weight there. And, of course, how can we forget Kirov? Funny thing is, and this is what's actually missed about Kirov's the thing it brought to the Red Fleet, was not actually its shipwreck throw weight, even though that's what's often stated as the big thing they brought. It's not. The thing that Kirov's actually brought to the Red Fleet that made them so feared was their area air defense capability, which was the fact they carried S-300F, Gargoyle, and SAN-20 Gargoyle. It gave the Russians standoff air defense capability in a way that they hadn't had before. And not only that, it gave them a decent number of tubes they could loft as well. That was the real thing with the Kirovs. Although, you know, the shipwreck tubes are still going to kick your ass if you get in their way.
Anyway, you want to beat this one over the head, Fleet?
I'm just checking to see if I'm right on that, because I might be getting my thoughts crossed on that, because I'm just thinking about it and thinking that doesn't sound exactly right what I've just said. I think I've got my wires crossed in my head. And I'm just thinking about it. Because I know the Kirovs did bring fleet air defense capability to the Russian fleet. But I'm just, was it actually Gargoyle, or am I actually getting confusing Gargoyle for Grumble again?
Virginia.
I've heard it's
So
almost heaven.
No.
That's Western.
No, don't you dare start singing.
Misty
Like,
Mountain.
I'm sorry. Have you heard of the Shenandoah River?
Oh, for God's sake. All right, get it out of your system
They
for 2 minutes.
say life is old there.
Get it out of your system,
And it's
folks, for a
younger than
second.
the
Older
trees.
than the trees, younger than the mountains.
Going back the trees, country roads, get copyrighted to the place.
I
belong
belong West
West
Virginia.
Virginia.
You mama, take me home. Country road.
No, like what Gunnery Officer just posted.
Thank you. Thank you, Scoot. There we go. Yeah, it was SAN6 Grumble. Yeah, I was getting my Grumble and my Gargoyle mixed up. Thank you, Scoot. I thought it was.
Okay.
Yeah, I was getting my Grumble and me Gargoyle mixed up. Thank you, Scoot.
Like
Yeah,
your de
so-
facto and your de jure.
Yes, apparently. And on that last little correction, it is time to end. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching.
Watch out, become crab.
We've had an interesting ramblings.
Yeah, Fleet became a crab.
Crab rave. Oh, I remember that. I remember that meme was popular. Good times. Good times.
Look! I turned myself into a
Not
crab.
popular now.
I'm Crab Foxer.
I haven't seen Crab Rave around in a while. I gotta say, like I haven't
You
seen.
don't go in the right corners of the internet then.
Like it has been a while since I've seen a wild, unprompted Crab Rave.
Right.
But yes, thank you everyone for watching. Since it is Saturday, I will be running my usual Saturday game night here in my server, as I usually do. What we'll do, I'm not sure, but it'll be something fun, I'm sure. For those of you on YouTube and those of you who are multi-platform enjoyers, please do feel free to join me tomorrow for Twitch streaming, the name of which I forget. Fleet Sunday Streaming, there it is. Not sure what it'll be, but we shall see. Thank you to the audience and the panel. So thank you, Foxo, Dragon, Moe, Ruinon. Pleasure as always to have you here. Oh yeah, Knight, we did get through all the questions. Absolutely.
And we didn't blow up.
Yay!
Ooh.
Hooray! Explosions were limited!
Yeah, there wasn't too many question night. It's
Hey,
like, what?
And hey, it gave us time for the tangents! We do love a good tangent
Some
here
good.
on Ramblings.
Some are good. Some
Hey.
are.
Look, none of the tangents resulted in swear words being exchanged or insults, and as far as I'm concerned, that's good stuff. Because it was vigorous, active discussion where people had different opinions, and that is good. And most importantly, nobody's opinion was disrespected, which is the important thing in a good debate. And that's what matters.
Love the seal.
Love the seal?
Embrace your inner Canadian and club the seal.
We are not going to club the seal. The seals must be protected. We must protect. We must... What's the one? What's it? What is it? He protect. He something. But most importantly, he something else. I forget what the three are.
It varies.
Never mind. So yeah.
Usually it's he protect, he attack, he do something else.
Oh,
Anyway.
yeah, that's it. Anyway, thank you everyone. Take care, and I'll catch you all tomorrow if you're on Twitch.